Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayenka from our studios here in London. On today's show, an international display of allyship as UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak meets with US President Joe Biden at the White House. I'll be giving you a breakdown of what the two leaders discussed shortly. And the EY World Entrepreneur of the Year 2023 event is taking place in Monaco this week. The annual showcase is dedicated to celebrating the accomplishments of intrepid leaders. Noella Musunuka, the founder and CEO of the non-profit organisation Malaika, is on the judging panel, and she'll be joining me shortly from Monaco to tell us what she'll be looking out for. Then later, Agnes Gittal, the Executive Director UK and Europe at the Eastern Africa Association, will be joining me from here in the capital with an update on the implementation process of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. But first, Downing Street has announced that the UK will host a global artificial intelligence summit this autumn to evaluate the technology's most significant risks. It comes after two open letters warned of the power of AI, with some key developers themselves calling for a 6-month pause on the most advanced work, as they said even they didn't know how to control the machines. Yesterday, Rishi Sunak met with US President Joe Biden at the White House. This was the Prime Minister's first official visit since becoming leader of the Conservative Party in October. Talks between the two leaders centred around the ongoing war in Ukraine, investment in green industries and the regulation of artificial intelligence. The two-day trip is seen as an intentional display of allyship.
As NATO allies, we're working together to help provide the collective defense of all of us, and we're going to further, I hope, we're going to discuss today plans to further strengthen our economic relationship. And the global economy is undergoing, I think, the greatest transformation that's occurred since the Industrial Revolution. And something you know a lot about, AI, is going to play a big part in that. I want to hear your views on that as well. And we don't have a closer ally than Great Britain, and we're delighted you're here.
Mr. President, thank you. Thank you for the warm words, but also thank you for welcoming me to the White House and for allowing me to stay in Blair House, which I've got to say, the spare room in the flat in number 10 Downing Street doesn't quite compare. So it's been a real privilege. And as you said, it's daunting to think of the conversations that our predecessors had in this room when they had to speak of wars that they fought together, peace won together, an incredible change in the lives of our citizens. And again, for the first time in over half a century, we face a war on the European continent. And as we've done before, the US and the UK have stood together to support Ukraine and stand up for the values of democracy and freedom and make sure that they prevail, as I know we will. But also, I completely agree with what you said. Our economies are seeing perhaps the biggest transformation since the Industrial Revolution, as new technologies provide incredible opportunities, but also give our adversaries more tools for harm. But one thing I know won't change, I'm confident won't change, is the strength of our partnership, our friendship, and we will put our values front and centre, as we've always done, to deliver for the British and American people. For having me, Joe.
Prince Harry has shattered constitutional convention by becoming the first senior royal in modern times to give evidence in court. Over 2 days this week, the Duke of Sussex testified as part of his lawsuit against Mirror Group newspapers. Prince Harry alleges his phone was hacked and other illicit means were used to gather information about his life. MGN is contesting those claims, saying the Duke's allegations are lacking evidence or have been brought too late. In recent months, the Duke of Sussex has been engaged in 6 legal disputes at the High Court. Well, for more on this, I was earlier joined in the studio by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, so constitutional convention broken, Prince Harry in court again, although this was the first time he was actually testifying as a witness. I believe there are about 6 cases going on at the moment, but this week's one was specifically against the Mirror Group newspapers over alleged phone hacking. It's been all over the news in the UK for obvious reasons. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, well, I think for Harry, this is not just a moral and an ethical case that he's brought, but it's also a very vindictive one. He always obviously talks about his family. That's part of the reason he moved out to California, was to protect his family from the press. He refers a lot in a case that's currently ongoing about his childhood and what he had to live through and how he thought his friends were turning against him. He felt he couldn't trust anyone, when actually he thinks it was the journalists that were hacking his phone or illegally obtaining this information. But it's also vindictive, I think. Also, you remember his mother, he puts the press down to her death and chasing her into that tunnel. So I think that these are the reasons he's really going to war against the tabloid press. And as you say, it's historic. It's the first time in 130 years that a royal has taken the stand, who's become a witness, who's being interviewed in court. And there are reasons why the royal family don't do that. The never complain, never explain was there for a reason. So he's fighting for his reputation, his family, and ultimately his mother. And Harry's overall charge is that MGN, Mirror Group newspapers, whether by phone hacking or other means, obtained information by deception or illegally. The problem here is that I think he's definitely got a case in terms of morally and ethically. I think he was very badly treated by the press, of course. But you have to prove this in a court of law. You have to prove that this is what happened. And a lot of these things seem quite circumstantial. He says, how could they have got this information? You know, I have my suspicions. Well, that's not enough in a court of law. You need hard, cold evidence. And at the moment, it doesn't look like he has that. I think he's also a prince he's an object lesson, really, in why you don't do this, because everything is stacked against you. As one analyst put it, it's like playing a game of football in which the other team is also both the referee and the commentator. So he can have a go at the press in court and he can be cross-examined, but then the press have their own say that evening and the next morning and the next day and on Twitter, and, you know, everyone's against you.
They're controlling the narrative.
Of course they are, yeah. So you're attacking the people who really do control what people are talking about, because then they can go and... So, you know, we've
Is that
heard...
not intimidation?
No, well, I mean...
That's what's been accused. That's part of the allegations as well. That
they're in this
have been
position, and
intimidated.
Harry knew that he'd be in this position, so he's brought this, you know, upon himself. And also you have all of the details about your relationships when you were a young child. Who wants that coming out? Who has lived a completely faultless life? So we've heard about, you know, relationship breakdowns, arguments with his brother and his father, drug use, visiting adult entertainment venues, details you don't want to be made public. And the point is, he needs to prove that the Mirror News Group hacked his phone, and I don't think he has that evidence, or we haven't seen that evidence yet. News Group newspaper says the claims are being brought too late as well, so this is another thing that could be against him, as the judge could say the statute of limitations has passed. I think it's either 3 or 6 years. This is a long time ago. This is many decades ago now that really we're talking about. So I think generally the court is not the kind of place to go for a moral case. It's not the right precinct to be dealing with things like feelings. It's cold, hard evidence, and it's going to, I think, ultimately, Harry probably, if he does win and he gets compensation, then that's great for him. But I think the loss is everything that we're seeing now, his whole childhood and those scandals all unearthed again. And it's, you know, who's the real winner there? So I don't think anyone really wins in this situation. And at the moment, it's not going great for Harry.
Yeah, in fairness to Harry, though, it's not just Harry. There are people like Ian Wright, some other, who is obviously ex-England, ex-Arsenal player. There are so many individuals across the UK, celebrities who have taken these tabloids to court. And if you can, just for our viewers in Nigeria, could you just provide just some little context to what this hacking is? Because some people may not know what it's about, where it's come from. Yeah, so this is decades, really, the sort of 90s and early 20s of people who would often, you know, celebrities and royals, their sort of personal life, private life would be end up in the newspapers, and they would try and work out where this has come from, because they hadn't told the newspapers, and they're fairly sure their friends and their family hadn't told the newspapers. And what it was journalists, individual journalists, hacking into their telephones and listening to illegally messages, yes, all going through their bins and just obtaining this information illegally. So through bank, you know, hacking in various ways to get sources of information. Journalists have gone to prison for this. And like you say, this has been happening for many years now, and many of these newspapers have set aside millions of pounds in compensation to make sure that it doesn't go to court, because what they want to do is really settle outside of court. So the Mirror News Group and other newspapers like the Daily Mail and their publishers have forked out hundreds of millions of pounds to pay people off. And like you say, there's lots and lots of a long list of celebrities. The reason Harry is doing this is because he's going to war with them. He doesn't need the money. He wants to prove... Doesn't need the money? He doesn't need the money. No, Are you sure?
They've just signed a huge deal with Disney.
Oh, gosh, another one.
this is more personal.
It's personal.
For him. And so he wants to prove beyond all doubt that this was happening to him, that he's, not been making this up. This hasn't been some kind of mental illness in his head, that this was happening. Yeah. And so, but it's really hard for him to win, I think, at the moment, because he needs this cold, hard evidence. There needs to be a smoking gun. And it's not enough just to say, well, this is too good to be true, or I have my suspicions, or which at the moment he is. But of course, the case is ongoing. We don't know what else they have in their locker. But at the moment, I think it's not looking great for him in terms of his reputation or in terms of this case, because all of the cards seem to be stacked against him and with the press.
Yes, poor Prince Harry having to bring it out all in the wash again, and it's not the end. I'm sure there are going to be more times we're going to see him in court over the next few months. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
The EY Entrepreneur of the Year event is a unique global programme that recognises entrepreneurial achievement among individuals and companies that demonstrate vision, leadership and success. The yearly event, which runs through June 9th in Monaco, France, is a gathering Ernst & Young uses to celebrate global business leaders whose innovations are transforming the business landscape. Mitchell Elegbert, the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Interswitch, is one of the 49 entrepreneurs competing for the title. Well, for more on what we can expect, I'm now being joined by one of the judges, Noella Kusaris Musunka, the founder and CEO of the non-profit organisation Malaika. Noella joins me from Monaco. Noella Kusaris Musunka, it's a pleasure to have you on Channel's Business Global. You'll be judging the applicants across 4 main areas of criteria, which include long-term value, entrepreneurial spirit, purpose, growth and impact. What type of entrepreneur are you hoping to find?
We're looking for entrepreneurs that have strong values, that invest in CSR, that have authenticity, that have their leaders, and that can have an impact in the world, looking after the planet in the trajectory, but that can scale up, that have the values and the components to be a world entrepreneur globally.
You are a philanthropist, Noella, and a mentor to millions of girls in the DRC, across Africa, and even beyond that. How important is it for female African entrepreneurs to be celebrated and recognised on the global stage?
We have a long way to go in Africa, but you know what? It's very incredible because every woman in Africa are entrepreneurs. They're working so hard, from the mother from the village, selling a vegetable, going to fetch the water. They are born entrepreneurs. They're looking after their families. Now, if they want to create a business, we need to give them the platform, help them with funding, with the structures. But I believe the rise of entrepreneurs over the years, for the youth, for the women, will be really, really, really a big steps in Africa. And I believe that more women need really to have in the continent a place to really flourish. And we need to empower them, we need to help them, we need to give them the world environment to be able to create their own business and to be registered, to have a bank account, to have companies, to have the government supporting them, to have the law supporting whatever they want to do.
Noella, before I let you go, talk to us about Malaika. It's a huge global brand. What are the next steps?
It's very funny that you asked me this question, what's the next steps? Because I think the last few days, we've been really talking with all the entrepreneurs that it's so important to celebrate what you've been achieving. Malaika has been set up 15 years ago. It's an ecosystem that empowers thousands of lives every day, from 5 pillars, build and lead a school for 430 girls, technical classes that we built with Caterpillar Foundation to give the skills to able youth and adults to have jobs. We have built 30 wells in different parts of Congo that impacted 35,000 people a year. We have our own agriculture farming, and we really have, through educational center, different fields different programs that we're offering to the community.
It's such an amazing opportunity, you know, just even if it just changes the life of one young lady. And I know you've changed the lives of thousands, tens of thousands, millions of young women across the continent. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Noella Casares Musunka, founder and CEO of Malaika. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, coming up on Channel's Business Global, Agnes Gittal, the Executive Director, UK and Europe at the Eastern African Association, will be joining me from here in the capital with an update on the implementation process of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And Somes Adukia, Managing Director, Canon Central and North Africa, will be joining me from Dubai with some insight on what the tech company is doing to empower creativity across the African continent. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. The Eastern Africa Association, in collaboration with the Kenya High Commission London, Commonwealth Secretariat and DMA Invest, hosted an inaugural annual lecture themed Leveraging Digital and Trade Finance to Accelerate the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. For the continent's small to medium-sized enterprises, access to trade finance is cited as one of the critical barriers for cross-border trade, and the panel of experts agreed that the promise of an integrated continent where intra-Africa trade is realised will only be a reality if all stakeholders, governments and private sector work together. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Agnes Gittal, the Executive Director, UK and Europe of the Eastern Africa Association. Agnes joins me from right here in the British capital. Agnes Gittal, it's always a pleasure having you on Channel's Business Global. You had a huge event at Marlborough House at the HQ of the Commonwealth Secretariat earlier this week. Talk to me about the Eastern Africa Association's inaugural lecture.
Thank you very much, Juliana, for having me. So the Eastern Africa Association annual lecture themed Leveraging Trade and Digital Finance to support the implementation of the Africa Free Trade Agreement was hosted in the sidelines of the Commonwealth Trade Ministers meeting, which took place earlier this week in London. And the purpose of this conversation was really to highlight the importance trade finance plays if the Africa Free trade is ever going to make sense for the continent. So it was incredible to have the stakeholders from policy and private sector to discuss ways of and innovative ways of making sure that trade finance is accessible for majority of our SMEs. Juliana, we talk about 90% of African workforce is from the SME sector, right? The cross-border traders who cross the border, from Kenya, Niger, Nigeria, these are mostly SMEs with no access to formal business banking.
So that was clearly why the discussion was taking place. It's nice to know that discussions around the African Continental Free Trade Area are still taking place, because if you are living in the global north, if you're not part of that kind of algorithm of discussion, you would think that nothing is happening with the trade bloc. What are some of the obvious glaring headwinds that are stalling the implementation process, which has been going on for quite some time now?
Juliana, it's our responsibility to continue pushing this discussion of the Africa Free Trade Agreement because it's important. We know what it means for an integrated continent, right? We talk about export sources of about $450 billion in 2050 if this is a success, right? But some of the challenges, Juliana, the infrastructure nightmare that the continent is. How do you move goods from, say, Ghana to Kenya without having to go through
through Paris?
Europe? Exactly. And so infrastructure difficulty, again, access to finance. It's already so difficult for businesses to access finance, big businesses to access finance. So that's one of the big challenges. But there has been incredible success. We know 48 member states have already ratified the agreement. We've already seen trading under ACFTA taking place. We under the Guided Trade Initiative, and about 10 to 15 countries are already participating in the process. So there is some progress. However, we need to address the key barriers that hinder intra-Africa trade, and hence the conversation of trade finance, digital finance, and how we can leverage that to support trade integration.
Absolutely. We've got Kenya and Nigeria talking to each other as we speak. It would be nice if more countries can start talking together so we can actually get the implementation process over and we can start reaping the benefits from it. I was at Marlborough House earlier this week. I know that the Eastern Africa Association were doing the event in partnership with the Commonwealth, of course, and the Kenya High Commission. Talk to me about what EAA are going to be doing up until the end of the year, apart from trying to sort out the issues with the AFCTFA.
It was lovely to see you, Juliana, earlier this week, and thank you for guiding the discussions. It's always a pleasure. So the Eastern African Association, an industry body that was founded over 60 years ago in Nairobi, Kenya, that has representation across the Eastern African region. So other plans for under the Eastern African Associations are the country-focused platform, where we'll focus on Ethiopia next month. We have another platform focusing on DRC, who are the newest member of the Eastern African region. So it's really trying to inform businesses, giving them credible information so they can make decisions to invest in the great East Africa.
Okay, and bring some of that glory over to the West as well. We could do with some of it. Agnes Gittal, Executive Director for the UK and Europe at the Eastern Africa Association. You wear several other hats, but you're wearing that one to speak with me today. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Now to our final story. Canon Africa has reaffirmed its unwavering commitment to empowering creativity, fostering innovation and promising inclusivity across Africa. The group has been embarking upon a series of initiatives in a bid to empower creatives to make their mark on the global stage. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Somesh Adukia, the Managing Director, Canon Central and North Africa. Somesh joins me from Dubai. Somesh Adukia, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global today. I think a lot of our viewers obviously are going to be familiar with Canon, but I don't think they realise just how much work that you've been putting in to the African continent to ensure that creatives can bring their vision to life. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. When we first visited African countries, early 2016, when our company was established, we realized that our presence has been not in line with what African consumers want. And based on the feedback which we received in the market, we started to build up a lot of strategies, a lot of initiatives, in which one of the things was how well we can connect with the people of Africa, how well we can understand the needs of African consumers. So rather than offering what we have, we created and designed our offering based on the needs of African consumers. And that's where I would say that the success of Canon Central and North Africa has been, coming in the last 7.5 years.
Absolutely. You've been doing phenomenal, especially trying to keep up with, the iPhone camera, which most people, even, broadcasters are struggling to compete with them. You have made significant contributions to advancing technology within Africa. Talk to me about the technology side of the work that you've been doing.
Canon is a technological company. In fact, we believe in a lot of innovations and coming out with new technologies and new innovations in our products and offering. In fact, 8% of our annual turnover as a company is spent on research and development. Now, some of these products and technologies which we were able to offer to some African companies, to African end users in our association with them in the last few years have really helped these companies to not only develop themselves, but also to somehow put these companies and these industries on the world map. To give you an example, there is a renowned Nollywood filmmaker called as Mr. Kunle Afolayan. He used to make very good Nollywood movies, but then we associated with him. We provided him with the latest range of cinema cameras, C300. He started to use this product and he created a very fine movie called as Citation, which was approved by Netflix, and now it is widely available on the Netflix platform. So this initiative helped Kunle, helped Nigeria, helped Nollywood to become listed on Netflix, to become on the world map of the film industry. So these are some kind of initiatives through our technology which has helped African companies We have many more examples, but I felt that this is something which is very close to my heart.
Goodness me, that Nollywood case study you just mentioned there has definitely given you some brownie points with me, Somesh, and I think it will too to our viewers, because of course we all enjoy Nollywood on Netflix, and years ago it was very grainy. So thank you for your technology there. Somesh Adukia, Managing Director, Canon Central and North Africa. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.